Now GVRP use timer to regulate its sending and receiving. Alright, so let's look into the concept of GVRP timer. First, we have the join timer. Remember, just now I mentioned that there is a join in and join empty. So it controls the sending of join messages, alright, so which is a join in and join empty message. And here, when we configure the timer, is in a centisecond. Alright, so centisecond basically is 100 millisecond. So here we have 100 centisecond. So 100 centisecond basically means that is 1 second. So the join timer by default is 1 second. Next we have a hold timer. Hold timer controls the sending of a join message. In this case, join in message, join empty message, and a leave message. And the hold timer here, the default is 600 centisecond. In this case, 6 seconds. Then we also have a leave timer that is control the attribute deregistration, and leave all timer that control the sending of leave all messages. And for leave timer, the default here is 30 seconds, and leave all timer, the default is 2 minutes. Alright, so these are all the default timer. You can change the timer on the trunk port. Right. Now let's look into the working principle of how the attribute work. So first we are going to look into the one-way registration and two-way registration on the VLAN attribute. Now here we have statically create a VLAN 2. Alright, that's on the switch 1. So VLAN 2 has been created. Now because the GVRP enable on Ethernet 1 here, so after the expired of the timer on the GVRP, which is 6 seconds, so E1 is going to send a join empty message to E2. Alright. Now for the GVRP to work, because that they are using a multicast, they are going to send 2 GVRP join empty message. Okay, so on the first one is going to send to R2, for the S2. Then on the second whole timer expired is going to send a second join empty to S2. Alright, so when S2 receives the first join message, again the whole timer start counting, and after 6 seconds, which is the whole timer, is going to send this join empty again to E4, which is in switch 3. So now on Ethernet 2 on S2, because early on you do not have this VLAN, so now the dynamic VLAN 2 is created on the port E2. So we have a join empty. Right. Now, if let's say we look into the other way around, now S3 now statically create a VLAN 2. So now we have a join in the message. It's because that now we already have a VLAN 2. So this join in message is being sent from S3 to S2. Again, it's going to send 2 times. Okay. So S2 of Ethernet 2 now dynamically register the VLAN 2. Now because that VLAN 2 already exists in switch number 2, after the join in and the message timer expired, it's going to send to S1. Now S1 have this message received, so that is a join in message. Now this is for the registration. Okay, so what happens if let's say we have the VLAN that's delete? So here in this diagram we delete the VLAN. Now when we delete the VLAN, we are going to send a leave empty message after the whole timer expired. Okay, and on top of that, because that this one have the VLAN 2 already, switch 2 of Ethernet 3 is going to send a leave in, because there's already have VLAN 2, to switch number 3 at that received by Ethernet 4. Alright, remember that this is manually correct. Okay, so once they receive this information, what will happen here is that after the S3 again delete the VLAN 2, it's going to send a leave empty to the switch number 2. So now we have the leave empty. So this is how the GVRP work, based on the join in, join empty, leave in, and leave empty. Alright, so next we are going to look into the GVRP registration mode. In GVRP we have 3 modes: normal, fixed, and forbidden. Now under the normal circumstances, this is the default mode. The normal mode is the default. In normal mode, an interface can dynamically register and deregister VLAN, propagate both dynamic and the static VLAN declaration. So basically, if I have a switch number 1 sent to switch number 2 and switch number 3, so let's say this is the topology. If I'm going to create a VLAN 2, and this is a normal mode, alright, so VLAN 2 will be created here, and VLAN 2 will be created here under the normal. So assuming that if I'm going to remove the VLAN 2, here is going to remove. That will be under the normal mode. Now next we are going to look into the other mode here is called fixed mode. So let's say now I have a fixed mode. So here we have a GVRP, and here we have a fixed mode. Alright, remember that this mode is configured on our trunk port. Now assuming that now I have the switch number 2 here configured as a fixed mode. If let's say I'm going to create a VLAN 2 here, the registration GVRP will send to S2, but S2 will not create the dynamic. So you can see that in fixed mode, an interface cannot create a dynamic registration VLAN. So the VLAN 2 will not happen over here. But it can propagate the static VLAN declaration. What is mean over here is, assuming that now in S2 I create a VLAN 3, okay, on switch 2. Alright, so here I'm going to send this VLAN 3 to S1. And S1, if let's say S1 here, the mode here is normal, so S1 will have the VLAN 3. So that's a fixed mode. Whereas the forbidden, in forbidden mode, an interface cannot dynamically register VLAN or propagate VLAN about any VLAN but VLAN 1. So which means that if I have a switch number 1, connect to switch number 2, and connect to switch number 3. So assuming that this here, I'm going to configure as a forbidden. And if I'm going to create a VLAN 2, I'm going to send to here. This guy will not create VLAN 2. No VLAN 2 will be accessed over here. Alright, neither that I'm going to propagate. And even though if I'm going to create a static, let's say I'm going to create a VLAN 3, so this information will not send to the switch number 1 as well. So that is forbidden. Alright, so we are going to examine the lab on how to configure the GVRP, which is quite straightforward. Okay, so straight away we jump into configuring GVRP. So here, the following figure shows the topology of company A. Alright, perform the following configuration according to requirement. Create a static VLAN 2 on switch number 1 and switch number 3. So we are going to create VLAN 2 on both switch 1 and switch 3. That should be quite straightforward. Okay, so this port here, E001, and this port here, E002 on both sides, we are going to configure the trunk. Okay, and we are going to allow VLAN to pass through is all. Okay, so we are going to configure the GVRP on switch number 2 to learn the VLAN 2. Alright, so this is a very straightforward lab. Okay, so let's jump to our lab now.